Welcome to Season 5 of the Big Sci-Fi Podcast with Adina, Brian, Cris, and Steve, the biggest sci-fi podcast in the galaxy. The adventure is just beginning here at the Big Sci-Fi Podcast, and we invite you to come aboard the Starship Tangent. We know you'll enjoy the conversation, the laughter, the banter back and forth, and most of all, friends who love hanging out to talk about all things science fiction. Set your phasers to fun. Here we go.
Greetings and hello. Welcome to another episode of the Big Sci-Fi Podcast, the show where we get together with our friends and have really good conversations about all things sci-fi. Today, I want to have a discussion about the very complex, iconic series, The Matrix. But first, I have to mention that we are part of the Trek Geeks Network, which is basically a place where you can listen to other fantastic Star Trek podcasts, something like Sci-Fi Sisters. Now, let's talk The Matrix. And just to be clear, we're talking about the first Matrix because there are now 4 of them. And the other ones are divisive, to say the least.
That's a nice word.
Yeah, to divisive. I think that's fair.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. So joining me today to help me unpack this movie are my usual fantastic co-hosts, Adina Mignona.
Hi, everybody.
Brian Donahue.
That's my Matrix theme music as they're fighting.
I like it. Pretty good.
I'm Brian from Ohio.
Brian from Ohio.
Brian
and
from
I should say
Ohio.
I'm from Toronto. And
I'm from Maryland. Merlin.
Not
Not the magician.
the magician. And then we have Steve Merkin, who you heard earlier make a comment about the other films, too.
That's okay. Hello, this is Steve calling you from wet California, which is very nice because we can use the water.
That's good. That's good. Glad it's raining.
Mm-hmm.
So now let's get this going because off air, Steve showed us his notes. And so he has a lot of thoughts. And I'm very curious to see how people feel about the Matrix. So starting with our first question for the evening, was this the first time watching the film? Was it anyone's first time?
No.
No. Watch this in the theater when it came out.
Me too. Yeah.
Excellent.
I saw it for the first time when it came out on, it may have been VHS.
Nice.
I can't remember if it was DVD or VHS, but that's when I saw it. As soon as it came out to rent, that's when I saw it.
I saw it maybe only 10 years ago because I was like, The Matrix, like it looks cool, but there's some weird stuff. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to watch that. But now I have.
Really?
Yeah, like I think it was because, and we'll get into this, like some of the stuff with Neo at the beginning, like I think I saw it at my buddy's house. I saw part of it and I was like, I don't know if I want to go back and watch that again. Cause like the mirror stuff and when he gets his face, not what's that called? He gets his mouth
He's told to shut up. He shuts him up.
It's like,
how old were you when you saw that bit?
I was probably older than what would make sense. If I, you know what?
Okay.
For canon reasons, I'm going to say I was 5 years old. Definitely 5. I definitely wasn't like 10 or 11, you know? But that messed me up.
Well, it's really, the whole birth scene for when Neo comes out of the little embryonic pod.
If you're a kid, it could be disturbing.
Yes, that would be very disturbing, especially with all the hoses and everything. And he gets them yanked out of it. Yeah, that's pretty disturbing.
Yeah, even now rewatching it, I'm like, that's still like I still like the movie, but it's still like it's a little intense. Like I wish, we'll get into this later. I've got thoughts about like minor gripes, but overall, what were your impressions of the film?
I think we should let Steve go first because he's just eager with the.
To me, okay, the movie was groundbreaking.
Yeah,
they established specific new methods of filming that had never been used before. Specifically, the 360-degree setup of cameras, so you could get the rotating shot of the character frozen in the air as they're revolving them around, and that's now been used repeatedly in new TV shows or sport broadcasts, things like that. So they established that. The the frozen moment, the flying through the air. It really was groundbreaking, and the quality of the film, the quality of the way it was made, was exceptionally great. So, yeah, it's in that sense filmmaking 101 that you should study when it comes to how to make a movie.
And so many things instantly turned into pop culture that have been part of pop culture ever since. Like, do you take the red pill or the blue pill?
Mm-hmm.
And just the concept
exactly.
of saying the phrase being in the Matrix, and that has, that movie brought that, made that thing a saying. And yeah, I remember seeing it in the theater and just being completely and utterly blown away by like every single aspect of the film.
It truly was groundbreaking. Watching it again, I'd forgotten how it still holds up, in my opinion. It's still very cool looking. There might be a couple things here or there, but I'd completely forgotten how groundbreaking the film was, and how even ahead of its time it must have felt originally. I remember watching it originally going, I've never seen this stuff before. And it was edgy. It was cool, which lended itself to becoming a part of pop culture very quickly. So,
yeah, that's kind of my impression too. Like, I love the movie, but it's a weird thing having watched it like fully, maybe in 2012, 2011 for the first time, where it was like I had been exposed to all the references before really seeing the movie. And so, like, as much as I love it, like the one part where he dodges the bullet, he does the slow-mo thing, and we're doing whatever you want to call it on screen, which you can't see because you're listening to us.
The
like
limbo.
That part's, yeah, the limbo. It's like it's cool, but for like I think it was Shrek 2 that did it.
Yes.
And that kind of ruined that scene for me a little bit. Whereas like that's been parodied so much where it's like, okay, it's hard not to think of the parodies. But that's not the film's
hard
fault.
at that. Yeah.
It's hard.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say it's hard to imagine the next generation of people seeing it who probably, yes, have seen more pop culture references before ever seeing the film. That's really I'm struggling with what that would be like.
Exactly. And it's hard. It's like one of those things where you don't ever want to knock the film for it because it was
the one film's fault.
Yeah. It's the one it spawned all those references.
And you know what struck me too, watching this film again? This seemed pretty daggone original in so many different ways. And I think now we're obsessed with remakes and sequels and prequels and all that stuff. This film is just so original in so many ways. It's not that it doesn't pull from something here or there, but it just felt so fresh and new and different. Amazing.
Yeah. It's one of those, like, it's you make such a good point. It's hard to really think about films that aren't remade or aren't from something else, like where The Matrix was just an original idea that wasn't from anything else. So that's really cool. Now we touched on this a bit earlier, but is any of this unsettling to any of you? Like, do you find this, like, if you break it down, you're like, ooh, that's kind of creepy.
When he's comes into his awareness in the pod or whatever with the weird liquid, and he's got all these hoses attached to him, and he's looking out and he sees all the other pods, and just absolutely a huge pull away. Very well done. Imagine waking up yourself like that and going, what in the what?
This is where I'm like, I get this is one of those things where it's like, from a logical perspective, it's kind of weird, but I get it for the film because you want it to be a big reveal. But I'm like, I'm sure Morpheus could have summarized, oh, by the way, the Matrix is this thing, and what's going to happen when we wake you up, you're going to be in this thing, but don't worry, we'll be here in a few minutes. Like, just to, like, prep him a little bit.
But
he's got to learn it, though.
Right. And that's a little, again, distancing yourself from what is cool and works in the film versus what would you really do in a real scenario.
Yeah, for sure. No, definitely.
So yes, in a real scenario, you're going to try to prep your guy because you don't want him to, like, have a complete and utter freak out when he wakes up.
Yeah.
But that wouldn't, everything about this movie was supposed to be just cool.
Exactly.
And it was. It absolutely
and the build up
was.
to it. Like even watching it again, it's like I know what the Matrix is, but when you get that like the text, the Matrix has you, and he's like it's everywhere and it's a prison, but you can't feel it, taste it, or touch it. It's like, well, that's that gives me the willies, but in like the best possible way.
And even towards the beginning of the film, when he's driving in the car and they're inside the Matrix, and he goes, I ate at that restaurant every day or a lot or whatever, But then to realize it's not real, But then I love how Morpheus says, hey, it's isn't it magnificent? Just to recognize how detailed it is and how lifelike it feels, but then to be driving around in it going, this is all fake.
Yeah. It's also interesting when Morpheus says they chose where you were at your zenith, when you were at your best. Oh, today. It's like, okay, I don't know if that's the best you could be, but they chose something they chose that because it was easy to film and it became something relatable. Yes.
Well, that was the year the movie came, that was the year the movie came out, which at the time you didn't give that a second thought, but rewatching it now to hear that 1999 was the best it was going to get, that's depressing today. And I would say that is the one jarring thing about the movie, rewatching it now, is for them to call out.
When did the film come out again?
1999. Yeah.
Yep. Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So this was
right before Y2K. So yes,
that's
we were
what I was going.
Best.
Yep.
Yes, we were at our very best. We were still typing C:/ blah 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 on our computers. But that's the thing. To me, the movie isn't now watching it again, it's not unsettling because it's science fiction. And the concept of, are we living our lives in some other universe? I mean, we've exposed this and discussed this so many times as to, are we living in alternate universe? What is this? Where are we? No, we are where we are, and that's basically it. But they wanted to make it seem that way, that the humanity is nothing more than Duracell batteries, which is why they called them Copper Top in the film.
I didn't know that. But it's always one of those things where, like, to get existential, it's like if we were living in a simulation, I don't know that I'd want to know that. I'm content.
Well,
I have a good life.
Right.
That's why I love the scene where the guy's eating he's being coerced by Smith, and he's eating the steak, and he goes, hey, I know this is not real, but I love it. So I'm okay with it. This is my reality, and I can accept it. I don't want the other reality, which is going around in I don't know what it was, the spacecraft,
like a hovercraft, I think.
Hovercraft, whatever it was, that has rivets and rust. So you get the idea, like it's in pretty bad shape. So yeah, you can see why, the alternative of reality is mush for eating and constantly at war with an AI.
Yeah.
The only problem I have with that is you can't, so the guy wants to go back into the Matrix. He wants to get plugged back in. I feel like at that point, there's no way you can trust that that's where you're going to wind up. I feel like you're basically asking to die. And that's what I can't handle about that request. I can understand regretting the decision to come out and know what's going, have your eyes open. I get that. And I get that he can, you can be vocal about, like, I regret this and I would not counsel anyone to do this, but I would not trust anyone to try to plug me back in. And I feel like then you're basically you're dying.
Yeah. And it doesn't seem like that's something that could happen the way that the AI was running its universe, or its industrial complex, is that they could take you were done this from the day you were born, and you were hooked up like that. So to go and hook up someone who's already at his age, they probably would kill him, essentially.
Well, even if it's more the trust, there is no reason for them to plug him back in, because something about him or who he is or his personality or something, they found him and brought him out. So if I'm the AI, I'm going to this guy's a risk. I'm not plugging him in. I'll tell him I'm plugging him in, but I'm not plugging him in.
Right. And just say, we're doing it. And then when you when they kill you, you don't know it because you have no reality anymore.
Right.
But I wonder if it's
interesting.
because he felt like it was better than the alternative. He's like, you know what, I could die, but at least I won't be doing this anymore. He probably was just miserable.
Well,
Yeah,
then
he
why
was
not
like-
just like die? That's grim. I'm sorry. I don't want to be grim.
Yeah.
I really don't.
No,
See,
you're
when you
being
say that
fine.
to lighten the mood, when you say, why don't you just die? It makes me think, I got to bring this up. This is a Trek reference, but like,
Uh-oh. See, we
I'm
got
Q.
to do it. We got to do it.
I'm
Go ahead.
Q. How can I prove to you that I'm mortal? Die.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, great
Yeah.
line by Worf.
Right.
Mhm,
That is great.
mhm.
Lighten the mood.
Mhm.
Thank
So
you.
did you guys?
That's Adina. We appreciate your Christmas spirit too. Just die. Just every bit. Just why would you want to live?
So true. So did you
Okay.
guys have a favorite character in the movie that was or
yeah.
wasn't Neo?
I love Mr. Smith. He is so
Yeah.
cool. He
He
is,
is.
what I wrote here was, he's so darn evil and cool all at the same time. And I love he's Mr. Anderson. I mean, it's just, and he shows his teeth when he says it. It's great. I love it.
He makes a fantastic elf in Lord of the Rings too.
Yes, I know.
He does.
Yes.
That's
He's a
true.
nice
He's
guy
a
in
great
that
actor.
too.
I
Yes, he
really
is.
like him.
Yep.
I also just love like his slow movements when he's interrogating Neo and he's opening up the binder or the whatever that notebook is folder.
Mhm.
And it's just so precise and perfect. And it's like
Mhm.
everything he says is great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just how he talked, everything. You know, the
Mhm.
sunglasses those guys all wore. Everything about this film just looked very cool and
Mhm.
groundbreaking. I mean, it just was visually something totally different. I really like the character of Morpheus, but I gotta say, I just Keanu Reeves' character. How do you say his name? I'm not saying it right.
Neo.
Keanu.
Keanu.
Yeah. I think I love his character, and I keep stuttering tonight. I'm sorry, but I just I just loved him.
It's okay. It's okay.
It's always fun watching him because it's like even though he is the focus of the film, same with John Wick, he out of all the characters has the least dialogue, and it's just always interesting.
But
in
he
that
has that
sense.
one important word that he's lived with for the rest of his life. Whoa.
Yeah, and of course the classic, I know kung fu. See, it's like whenever actually one line that I always quote was ever I hear people talk about AI, I have to say AI. He says it in a funny way.
Yeah, well, also watching it, the AI stuff in it. Whoa.
Yeah, right.
We're starting to really. This is becoming a part of our everyday lives, and so it's not to this effect. Oh, come on, it's not.
Is
you
this
know what I
where we-
mean? It's just we're starting to see it more, and I think it is all the more relevant to us today, like because we're touching it a little bit, you know, very simply, at least us civilians.
I'm making a face. People can't see, but I'm making a
she
face.
is.
Well,
Yeah, what is this face in regards to? Do you want to clarify?
Well, the face is, okay, I guess let me clarify because I really disagree with using the term AI to encompass the technology that we have today.
Right.
Because I think it really gives it's a misnomer for what we're actually capable of. We're capable of some really interesting predictive algorithms. It is not intelligence. And the fact that that's the term that we use to describe these algorithms, I do have some problems with because I think it really puts it sets an expectation in people's head for what they are, which is not what they are.
That's helpful.
We're so far away from what people's thoughts are. You know, AI is data. AI is R2D2 and C3PO. You know, those are AIs, and we are like so far away from anything like that. AIs are what was in the Matrix. Yes, that's not anywhere near what we have today.
So what term would you use? Because algorithms, I love algorithms. It's always fun to say.
Advanced algorithms, so a lot of times machine learning algorithms does get wrapped up with other AI algorithms, but I think machine learning is also just a subset that's not necessarily appropriate. So I like advanced algorithms. I like predictive algorithms. You know, those kinds of things I think are more appropriate for what really we have.
Since we're here, why do you think, Adina, since you probably have the most experience and knowledge of this, why is it being marketed then with the word intelligence? Is that just because it's a cool term and people?
Because that was the term that kind of got applied to advanced stuff in this realm back in like the 60s. I think there was one particular
that far back,
computer science conference that we can trace like one. I don't remember which guy it was, but one of the known people in the field used the term in a conference, and it just caught on. And we see this all over in science. Dark matter is a misnomer. Dark energy is a misnomer. The Big Bang is a misnomer. But these terms, which they're terms that just catch on, but they don't really adequately communicate what the real deal is. So it's just a term that's always been there. Not always, but again, since like the 60s or something. And we're trying to do more advanced things to figure out ways we are trying to mimic human ways of processing information and stuff. So we are trying in that way. So it just caught on. And so from as far as I'm concerned, that's always been the term in this field of computer science. So that's why we still use it today, because that's what we use. But I hate it, especially now, especially with what's been going on, because I think it's overstating in a lot of people's, brains what really we're capable of doing, which we're capable of doing. Don't get me wrong. Some amazing things, some like good and bad, amazing things, but it's not intelligence. It is not a replacement for intelligence. It's just advanced algorithms.
Is it more like
what
we see now today, Adina, where it's anticipating what we think, giving us choices? Okay. Exactly. What I wrote here today is, because you asked the question, does the film feel more relevant today with all our AI advances, is what you asked that question. Cris, and what I wrote, not really. Our AI is not out of control. We use it every day. It's never going to be used to be turned against us, only unless it was used by someone who's using it against us, some manipulating it in a way, either financially. I mean, if somebody was to get a hold of write a program which took 10 cents out of everybody's checking account, we would never notice the 10 cents missing. But that would be wealth beyond belief, okay? But like I wrote, right now, AI is doing spell check as I was writing out these things, and it was correcting it for me. So I appreciate that. I appreciate what is helping us out at this point in our reality. But what this shows in this film is that it's AI that builds upon itself, that creates a monster. And that's some of the problems I have with this film is the overdoneness of the artificial intelligence that they use in this film.
The overdoneness. Okay.
Yeah.
How, sorry, go ahead, Adina.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to ask, so in what way
do
you
me
think it was like overdone? Yeah.
Okay. To me, it's like when Neo wakes up in the pod, right? Who built all that? Who created all that technology that the AI did? I mean, that's the thing. Anything that's a piece of machinery, including the car you drive, was built by someone or something. Either it is robotics that helps build the car in the factory, but it still has to have human hands touch it to be able to complete the process of making it. Did humanity build these machines, these devices, and then the AI took it over? Because all it is just artificial intelligence. And so it just seems it gets a little overblown. I mean, at least in the movie The Terminator, as we find out in the subsequent films, it was the government that built the machines that the AI took over. And that's how they were able to win the war against humanity, because they used what was already existing to do that with.
So I'm assuming it was just that whatever machines humanity built, they obviously took over, and then they started building other machines that were able to build the big, I don't know, battery factories. But
that's
places.
Just it. It just seems like it's so overblown that I just can't accept that in the film I mean, it's great. It looks beautiful in the film. It's a great story and the whole thing. But in reality, and this is supposed to be somewhat in reality, it just doesn't seem like it's something that could ever really
it is
actually
science
happen.
fiction. It's not reality.
And it's
And
also
that's just it.
$21.99, I think, is what they
Yeah.
they think they are.
I mean, the ship that they're in was built in 2069. It was commissioned then. So you know that this is the end of this century is when this story is taking place, I guess. But even so, it just that always has bothered me about this film.
So what I see, in all the films, I'm going to say like this, where they have, AI that have gone out of, that are, anti-human or trying to take over the world, whatever. I mean, one of the key differences, which is why this is very much grounded in fiction and not any way, shape, or form connected to the real world, is the concept of somewhere along the line, and this is where we are nowhere close to this, these AIs in fiction become sentient and self-actualized. And that's to me, that's the difference. Data can do whatever he wants on his own. He's become sentient. He can make these kinds of decisions. All these advanced algorithms that we have today, they are only responding to things that humans tell it to do or have it do. And that is a big difference. And we are very, very like infinitely far away from having a data. And again, good or bad. And then, right, you have data and you have lore. You can have that go good. You could have that go bad. Whichever direction it goes.
But even data has done some stuff.
Yes. But the point is there's, again, data is sentient, and there's that like self-actualizing thing that makes him, and considered a person.
I think too, we have to just acknowledge that this vehicle of science fiction that puts sentience, that people that in artificial things can develop a self-awareness where we might consider them sentient, is a science fiction ploy and story. We can't automatically assume that is possible.
Right.
Ever.
Right. We have no indication that is possible in real life.
I think that speaks to the power of entertainment and very creative people who have told these stories throughout since the beginning of science fiction, and then you have very popular films like The Matrix, which was huge when it came out.
Oh, yes, it was.
Absolutely huge. Spawned 3 extra films, right?
I love it.
Whether they were good or not.
Yeah. That's such a great word, extra films.
Yeah. So I mean, use the word divisive or whatever, extra. And so I think that we have to be careful as science fiction fans. We can't assume it's ever going to get to the place where a computer, a machine, a robot, anything is going to actually develop self-awareness to the point where they might want to take over or have evil intentions. Right now, it is the people controlling it that are writing everything that could have evil intention.
That is correct. I agree with you on that, Brian.
Nefarious ways. So,
and it's the same thing with aliens, with parallel universes. These are all constructs in fiction that we have no real indication. There could be absolutely 100% no extraterrestrial intelligence or life out there. We have nothing to say that there possibly is, and the same thing, we have nothing to tell us that there maybe are parallel universes. A lot of these things, again,
well, you obviously haven't watched the same UFO documentaries I have, Adina, but whatever.
I hope we get both of those things. I hope we get aliens. I hope there's like a ripped me, super muscular.
Right. Chris, we need to, as a follow-up episode somewhere down the line, you guys need to watch The Creator.
Yeah.
And that's is part. I think part 1 is like it's on Netflix now, or it's coming on to Netflix. Is it?
Oh, is it really?
Or am I thinking of something else?
You might be thinking of something else.
Adina, do you remember a film? I believe it was called Surrogates with
Yes.
With Bruce Willis.
With Bruce Willis.
Yeah.
And in that film, people live an AI life in their chairs with their VR equipment, and to me, that seems like what this film could have been, or well, an alternative to this film, whereas you're living an AI life, and it kind of spills over into reality as it ends up in the end of the film, as I remember. But it was interesting about that is that you were living that. You could live that. We could live that AI life right now with VR goggles and equipment, things like that. You can live an alternate life and have that happen.
I don't think that technology. I mean, not well. I guess it depends on what is your knowledge of. Yeah.
That's where I feel like to take this back to the Matrix, where I'm like, this is the part like the machine's building everything. I can buy that. But it's just like the fact that the program is so perfect and so detailed that it can create smell and everything functioning to basically make a limitless world. And like they even brought up the one question which I find so fascinating: how would machines know what chicken tastes like? And that's brilliant. But it's just like that's the part where I'm like, okay, I don't buy that even advanced machines could make a virtual reality that perfect. That's the same reason why, like, even with the holiday, as much as I love it, I don't think like that to me always seems like the most far-fetched tech and trek.
Well, here's my answer realistic. To the how can machines know what chicken tastes like? They don't. Before the machines took over, we figured that out, and they're just borrowing our algorithms.
Okay, so we had the technology and they were boring.
That's my answer, especially because one of the things that I've been doing for the last several years is I actually manage a virtual reality lab at my office, and so I just pay attention to what's happening. And there are, I think in Germany somewhere, there are companies that are working on kind of like that virtual smell and such too, to enhance the experience in VR.
Interesting.
That's cool.
We invent it, they steal our I mean, that's exactly what they did just to begin with, is because they if in the movie they are our tech. They stole themselves from us.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know where I was going with all that, but that's kind of where I feel like
that was good.
Where the part where I'm like, I don't buy, but it's also the point of the movie, and it's like, and it's fine because that's what's so great about it.
Oh, I think this movie was so immersive, Chris, that the willing suspension of disbelief we talk about every now and then on the show, that's a theater term. I think, especially originally, I mean, you did buy it hook, line, and sinker.
Yes.
You were in this world. This was an engrossing film, to say the least. You wanted to know more. You wanted to learn more. So
one question, this is not on the list of questions. We're talking about just the look of the film. How did you guys feel about the green tint? Because that to me is always like so unique.
The green tint?
Yeah, where everything in the Matrix looks green except when they're in the training simulator, which is like more blue.
Yeah. But I wouldn't have thought about this until you said it, but to me, I would say that as a old school programmer, that always felt like the old monitors we used to use before we had color monitors. When we had monochrome monitors, there were the yellow ones and there were the green ones. There were two. There was like the yellowish and there was the greenish.
Very true.
Well, so that's probably where that like the Matrix code is green. So they're like, hey, let's make it. Yeah.
Well, wasn't that the old, even like the old computer screens, the old CRTs? The lettering came out in greenish colors, right?
Well, there was yellowish ones. There were monitors, like, because we had an IBM 8088, and I remember that one was yellowish. But like the PET computers I used at school and stuff like that, they had the greenish tint.
I had the greenish with my company I worked for in 1980 was Leach and Garner, and all their computer screens had the green printing on them. I remember that. Yeah, so that's interesting. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, it's just always cool. Like when. Like just always rewatching, I'm like, man, I never get tired of that, and that is such an iconic thing. And like one thing that I always find fascinating about like filmmaking, is that it's very hard. From what I hear, it's very hard to get that. I don't even know what you'd call it. The effect of when Neo's sleeping at his desk, and you see like when you look at his face, you see the light from the computer and all the images overlapping on his face, and that's always like apparently a very difficult technique.
Interesting.
So I always enjoy that. But did you guys have like a favorite moment in the film, something that stands out to you all the time when you watch it?
I love the Jedi training scene where he's learning jujitsu. I think that is great fun and well done. And Lawrence Fishburne just looks like a boss.
Yep.
Too. I mean, just don't fight him.
Yeah, I love that.
That's my
I
take.
always love rewatching that scene too, for
Mhm.
those reasons. And
Yeah.
the music I liked a lot in that scene specifically.
It also came out during a period of time where you had Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, or you had that movie. Then you also had Kill Bill, and there was like a resurgence of the kung fu fighting. And it was almost like, okay, so they learn kung fu fighting. He learns how to do that, right? And it only happens in the Matrix, but in the real world, nobody does kung fu fighting. It's just, it looked cool. It was a cool way of fighting. And they even mimicked, I think they said, some of Bruce Lee's fighting styles in the film as well. So, yeah.
So
go ahead,
I'm gonna
Adina.
Because you mentioned Kill Bill and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is absolutely one of my favorite movies of all time.
Is it really?
Yeah. And what I would say is one of the things that had struck me about that movie and just that time period was, hey, look, all these women are kicking butt.
Yep.
And so Trinity, I really love Trinity that you have you've got one of the main characters is someone who's kicking butt. And I remember that standing out to me, but also, and I was very into seeing all the kung fu-ish. Yes, that whole style. Yes, love Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Yeah, and it's beautiful.
Love Kill Bill
see,
too.
the same film where you've got that slow motion moving through the air as they're doing it was used in this film as well. So yeah, it was that whole resurgence of the kung fu films or that kind of film style came out in this. But Brian, what do you say?
Well, I did. The kung fu, that was
and
me.
then for me, the scene the moments of favorite was when Neo comes out of his embryonic fluid pouch, whatever, and sees the real world around him and realizes, oh my God, what's going on? And of course, he like all the other all the rest of humanity are Duracell batteries to power the AI, which there's a contradiction there to me in that if humanity decided to block out the sun to prevent them from being able to recharge charge their systems or run their systems with solar power, right? So they decide that they're going to turn humans into batteries. But if you block out the sun, don't you destroy all life on the earth as we know it? Because all life relies upon sunlight, plants, animals, everything. Isn't that like suicide? Really?
I would think so, but I'm hoping I don't even know. Like I've always wondered. That's like, well, how do the humans expect to survive if do they just block out the sun or do they destroy it? How does that?
They blocked out the sun,
right?
You see the clouds and the lightning and they basically created a nuclear winter.
Did they reverse whale probe it? To call it that?
I don't know.
The cloud cover. I don't know how they.
But that's just, they don't really explain that, which is fine because this is science fiction. We don't need the explanation.
And it's actually kind of cool that they don't fully explain what happened. They give you a Sparks Note version, but you don't really get the full details. So that way you can kind of just, as the viewer, fill it in, and you could have those discussions like, wait, how would they have done this thing?
You guys notice too, most of the characters in this film, if I'm recalling this correctly, are very pale skinned.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
that's true.
Like they kind of went with that continuity, I guess, issue with these people. These people aren't seeing the sun, and so they're all pale skinned. It also just looks futuristic, and the
only human beings that exist live in this world inside the earth called Zion, which is, of course, biblical word. And they do that because they're closer to the core of the earth where they're getting energy from there. But still, we don't go there. We don't see it. The only true born humans are the two fellows that end up, one of them dies and the other one is severely injured. And that's all we know about humanity. And that's it. This is where the movie kind of falls off a cliff at the end. And the other two films don't help it either.
Right?
Well, yeah, I think like the other two films, if you're talking about those, like the weaker aspects are everything outside of the Matrix. Like all the Matrix stuff to me is cool, except I want to call him Will Ferrell. He's not Will Ferrell in the second one, but there's a really good like MTV movie award show where Will Ferrell does a skit where he pretends to be the architect from the second one. And it's hilarious, but I don't know where I was going with that either. But
but I mean, the whole idea of the Matrix is you can do anything in the Matrix. You can be anything. You can do it, except one thing. And they think they say in the film, if you die in the Matrix, you die in reality, correct?
And we saw that. We saw it happen to, what was it, a mouse?
Right.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, if you inflicted the punishment that his name just popped up, the leader of the group, my brain just went on hold.
Morpheus.
If Morpheus suffered the same impact he would have gotten in that fight in the bathroom where he's thrown against the wall and he's smashed against the toilet and he's waxed against he would have died from those injuries. He would have died because every one of the police officers that was shot in the film or anyone that was killed, was that mean that one of those little Duracell battery characters also died at the same time because they died in the Matrix?
I think so. I think it's one of those things where it's like, they would have died, but if you take like Fast and the Furious does this logic a little bit where it's like, hey, as long you can fall, as long as you land on a car, you're good. So I think it's just like a character taking too much damage. That's impossible. So I buy it but it's a Hollywood thing.
But, even in cowboy films, they're punching the living daylights out. They should all be dead. They should all be unconscious.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So
then when Neo was shot by Agent Smith, he doesn't die from being shot physically. He dies from being shot emotionally.
Right.
Or
like his body
mentally. His body suffers the same effects of it and he dies. However, he doesn't die because, much like in Sleeping Beauty and Snow White and Beauty and the Beast, love's first kiss will revive anybody.
Anybody want to sing Power of Love?
No.
That's the
That's
Power
wrong
of Love.
movie.
Okay.
That's Back to the Future.
That's the wrong movie, but it's the right subject matter.
Yes.
It's thematic. Thematically relevant.
It's because that's the only way he could come back when Trinity says, and like Belle in Beauty and the Beast, I love you. And she kisses him and Beast is revived and he's okay. That's cool. But in reality, if he dies in the real world, he'd just be dead.
Oh,
I don't want to kill the film, kids, but
that's interesting.
You don't want to kill.
It's interesting too. I'm sorry, Chris. In this film, when it came out, I'm a pastor, and so I'm in that realm in world here. There were a lot of Christians, church people, whatever, that were pulling some metaphors from this film. I mean, we even have the name Trinity.
Yeah.
You know, the chosen one.
Yep.
Stuff like that. Just an interesting take on that. Now, watching it again, I'm going, yeah, okay. I could, it's interesting.
You can see where he's the Jesus character in this film. He dies and is resurrected.
Right.
And he goes to save the world because that's the whole point.
Yeah. So just a side point there.
No, but it's a good point.
I always wondered, like, so as a pastor, does it rub you the wrong way, or are you like fully on board with
Hollywood tends to rub the wrong way in a lot of ways for a lot of people, not just anybody religious. So a long time ago, I stopped worrying about, is this sacrilegious, or you know what I mean? Because if they're not in the same, if they're not rolling with me like I am, why should I expect anything different? Well, so they didn't ask me my opinion on the film, or any other pastor. So for me, it's kind of you take it in if you actually get from the source, they're trying to do any type of allegory or anything like that, that's cool. Then you pay attention and you learn what you can, and you go, oh, that's interesting. I like the spin on it, whatever. But most of the time, it's just entertainment, and everybody calm down.
Well, right. And the thing is, if you go looking for things that I think are sacrilegious, or you go looking for things that are counter to your point of view, you're gonna find them.
Yeah, I think it's like one of those things where at that point you might as well just not watch any sort of media.
Yes.
Because you're gonna just be miserable.
And I will say this, and I tend to be a pastor that can push the envelope a little bit about what I say, and I'm not as traditional as many pastors are, in for various different reasons, which I won't get into on the show, but I feel like I can be more offended actually by some Christian films that are just horrendously and poorly made. Now, there's been a lot of growth in that area over recent years, and films that people have been paying attention to in the last 5 to 10 years. But traditionally speaking, even the Christian films have not been up to par. They just haven't been as far as quality of production, acting, all that thing until more recent years. And so I get more upset at that than I do at, films that aren't supposed to be religious, but maybe have some things in them.
And the religious overtones. You're absolutely right. And the concept of the one, I mean, Luke Skywalker, he's the one that's going to save everyone from the rebellion. He's going to be, he's the chosen one. Or it's one that's been used over and over again. And this is just another version of it. So hopefully it doesn't offend, because it's just an allegory. Like you said, it's an example of people that can relate to, they can accept, or I understand where they're coming from with this character, what he's supposed to represent.
There's a great difference too between a loose allegory and something that's supposed to be pretty solidly. This means this. This is the opposite of this, or whatever, and so the Matrix, like I don't find anything offensive about anything they're trying to say about what I believe. So
yeah, that makes sense. That's kind of how I like. I feel like it's not trying to. It's just it's like loose allegory, I think, is the best term. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now we were talking earlier about if you die in the Matrix, blah blah blah, you die.
Yeah.
So if you are Neo and you could be Neo and do all those cool Neo things, would you want to live in the Matrix?
Live in the Matrix and know you're living in the Matrix, or
and
live
be
in
like
the Matrix
Neo,
crap?
know that you can dodge bullets and do all these things, but you got to deal with the fact that that's not real life, and that you're eating slop every day, hanging out in the Nebuchadnezzar.
I love the name. Also, the ship, the Nebuchadnezzar. I love that name as well.
Which definitely messed me up in church, where I was like, "Oh, like in the Matrix," and then Dill's like, "Shook her head at me."
No, it's like in the Bible, Chris.
Yeah, no, I know.
It's the other way around.
But Nebuchadnezzar lived forever. He was an aged man, right? Wasn't it in the Bible? Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I would say, so if the real world is that world where they're living underground, they're eating crud every day, whatever, they go into the Matrix. I mean, they're going in with a purpose. They're going in to try to help other people and try to figure out how to, turn it all around. So if I'm in that situation, I'm certain I would want to be in some position where I'm trying to help. I'm trying to help.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, if you had a choice of like, you could just be like, oh yeah, I'm going to go be Neo, which maybe that's not the right way of wording it.
I guess what's the choice? What choice between being Neo and what?
And then just, I guess, living in the Matrix, but just being a regular person that doesn't know that they're in the Matrix.
But then I wouldn't. It's not a choice because I wouldn't know.
How about this? How about
fair enough.
If you could be a Neo-like character that is aware of everything, is there to help, has to battle the bad guys every now and then, or somebody who is human but living outside the Matrix in Zion. Is that the choice?
I guess that works too. I thought it was just like a very like, hey, would you want to be Neo in the Matrix or just be
someone in the Matrix?
Yeah,
I would want to be Neo in the Matrix if I knew that I was helping people somehow. I was, even with the risk, but also as long as every now and then you knew you could also have peace and rest
Right.
to recover from what you have to do. You could die because you're fighting the bad guys. As long as there was some kind of rest and peace for different time periods, I would do that, especially if you're helping. So if you're just there fighting bad guys and you're never going to win.
Well, you're
ultimately,
at war.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
But if
it's
there's no possibility of victory at all,
so then let other people. Well, you don't know. You never know that there's no possibility of victory. If you knew that, why would you fight?
Right.
Just stand up for what you believe in, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then
it's a good question, Adina. I'm not trying
no,
to.
and this is the very like one of my favorite books that I listened to. It's a series. It's one of the great courses. It was called Sci-Fi, Phi being PHI, short for philosophy.
Okay.
The Professor David Johnson, I want to say, but it's one of the great courses, and he goes through a lot of these different concepts, and he does spend quite a bit of time, a whole chapter, a whole lecture plus some on the Matrix and all of these philosophical things. So, and this is a great movie to have those discussions with, because these are hard things to. Yeah, these are hard questions.
Another movie that's great to have these philosophical questions about is Star Trek
4:
The Final Frontier. Anyways, we're close. We're close. One movie away from each other. That's pretty amazing.
I don't buy he's at the center of the universe. I love that movie, though. We'll talk about this later.
Center of the galaxy, not the universe, the galaxy.
Right, the galaxy. That's correct. At the center.
If you ask that question, do you want to live the life of Neo? The question is, everyone who's in the Matrix theoretically could live the life of Neo if the program was written for them to be that particular character. Because as you saw, Agent Smith would become part of someone else. He would become the police officer, or he would go away from being the police officer, because the program is manipulating you into being a certain character for the moment. And the character that is controlling you at that point would be Agent Smith, as he's moving from, getting from here to there, because that's the computer program that is fighting you inside the Matrix. But then again, if you think about what is life like for actual humanity during that time, living in the center of the earth in Zion, if you win the war and you defeat the AI, what if you got to live in as your new reality? I mean, if they made it to the surface, from wherever they are, and they come and they see this clouded cover and everything, there's really no life for them. So
we don't know. We don't know the full extent of the damage and the full extent of the recovery options. So without knowing, I like to think that something is recoverable there. That whatever the state the Earth is in is potentially temporary, and if the humans were to defeat the monsters,
they could reverse the action.
But we don't know. I don't think they ever got that. We never get that deep into what
all we see in Zion from the other films is just like basically super sweaty raves. It's just sweaty people dancing all night. And I'm like, that sounds awful.
They're free versus the people in the Matrix are not free.
No.
And these are the hard questions. Is freedom worth it?
That's my thing. I think I'd be more like, I think I'd see, not that I would try and betray people, but I get Sci-Fi. I'm like, I just want to be able to eat my steak in peace. You know what? Let me just get through my day.
Then you would be happy in the Matrix.
I would be much happier in the Matrix if I don't know that. If I'm not like Neo, where something feels off, if I fully believe it, I'd rather just not have the truth. Because
so
I'm
the one character who is just happy to go back to the Matrix, because at least that's a life he knew he'd enjoy, as opposed to the life he was living, which is fighting the AI and just eating slop. And, it's just not as cool.
Well, and no, it's not just, it's again, freedom versus not being, it's that. It's okay, you're in the Matrix, you can enjoy your steak and whatever foods your heart desires, assuming that's your setup in, not everyone has that kind of a life in there. There's still homeless people in,
there's still poverty
in the Matrix.
Yeah. There's the homeless guy that's sitting there drinking and they're going, that's what he's been given. That's the choice his life is going to be because the computer said so.
In the Matrix and be the equivalent of, Elon Musk, but your real body is just this battery for the machines, and you are not free. And
right,
I mean, I find it hard for that to be acceptable to any. I mean, everyone has their own opinion and your own choice in this hypothetical situation, but I, for one, that makes me sick to my stomach thinking about that.
Absolutely.
I'm not free and I'm just in this. I'm being used.
Well, I think
even if I don't know that I'm being used.
I think what you just said there at the end, though, is the key. If you have zero clue about any of it, you don't know. You have
but
zero
it makes
clue.
me nauseous to think that could possibly happen.
But with the question posed for us is, would you rather be someone like Neo who's aware but living in the Matrix, or someone who's not? The bliss.
I would always take awareness.
Well,
I think that's my choice. Is I would always take awareness, even if it means that knowledge is burden. I would still want to know the truth, and if that means I'm gonna try to fight for what I feel is right, then that's the way it's gonna be. And that's how I see it. That's my choice.
As my friend Pete Cooper used to say, and it's in this film too, if ignorance is bliss, then I'm a happy man.
Yeah.
And it seemed to be like, if you don't, these batteries have no idea except what they're given. So they're going to live their lives living out this fantasy. And if you don't know what the reality is, then that is the reality and you're happy with it. I mean, right now, I'm happy.
I mean, if this is the Matrix, it's like, well, I like my life. Like, I'm getting married soon. I'm in film school. Work is going fairly well. I'm enjoying this. Yeah, I don't know. It's a hard thing because, of course, you also, and I totally get where you're coming from. It's like you want to know the truth. Yeah, these are definitely thoughts I've had, like walking to the bus.
Right. Here's another way to describe this. Free will.
Yeah, and they bring that up in the film as well. Yeah.
We all desire, in whatever terms it is, free will. We don't want anybody telling us we have to believe a certain way, we have to act a certain way. We put up with it as far as basic government rules in whatever nation we find ourselves in, so that we can have somewhat of a peaceful society, if at all possible. But we want free will. We don't want to let go of that. I think, Adina, that's really what you're talking about too. Is this is a matter of free will as well.
And they bring that up in the movie as well. They mention the concept of free will, and that's what the batteries don't have. They're only their existence is based on what they're given.
Yeah.
So
very good.
That's the beauty of this film. It brings up all these philosophical questions and discussions.
Really
and I think if the movie does anything, it does that. And that's the best part about this movie. It's because we're having this discussion because it does touch on all these things. Only it's done in our favorite genre, science fiction, kids.
100%.
And by being science fiction, we can go to extreme lengths in having these philosophical discussions that are easily, or they're relatable. Let's put it that way. They're relatable. And that's the beauty, and that's why this movie is great. The subsequent ones are, but
I enjoy actually the second one a lot.
It's just, isn't it a continuation of the first one, except it has much more special effects, like the big, chase on the freeway where they're crashing in and destroying everything and all that stuff. It just
stuff is cool, but like 3 is just awful, and I'll probably watch 4. I'm thinking about trying to watch it this weekend, but I have other stuff to do.
Yeah, I'm going with I haven't seen it, but I just don't have the inclination, the drive to do it.
Yeah.
I can't remember. So it was somewhere a year or two ago, we tried watching the 4th one, and I don't know if we've made it through. I was asking my husband about this earlier this evening. I don't know if we made it through, but neither of us were terribly impressed. And this was for me one of those movies that they didn't have to make any sequels. They could have just left it alone. But I understand the temptation.
Yeah.
And if they hadn't made sequels, I think there would have been a lot of like, ooh, well, what is going on in Zion, and we'll kind of want to know more, but I don't know. It just didn't.
It would have been. This is one film that would have been fine to leave totally alone.
Yes,
it still would be a classic. It still would be groundbreaking, and it would be a discussion starter for years and years to come.
I think
about
it would
some of the things we've all talked about.
Yeah,
more of a classic, because not that it's not a classic, but it's hard to talk about The Matrix and. You can't possibly say how good the first one is without bringing up the other ones. But I think it's like, I think you're right. If they had not touched it, if they didn't do the other ones,
it's about. I mean, let's be honest, okay? Sometimes what spurs on a sequel is that the first one just did so well at the box office that it becomes, let's see if we can't get a little more money and create a little more stir with the recipe we had in the first, I think that's what happens with a lot of films.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's definitely the money part of it is, hey, it's a money grab. Let's see if we can get more money out of this for the studio. And hopefully, I think they want to make good films. I don't think any movie studio wants to make a bad film or a poor story. I just think sometimes you have an idea that is so good and so rich and well done originally that sometimes it's better to just move on and find another good idea.
How about
building upon that?
There was never any other Star Wars movies after the first one. Would you have been happy with that? The way that they ended the movie, the Death Star's destroyed, the Rebels win, movie's over with. No other sequels. Is it a stand? It's a stand.
I'm okay with that because. Well, oh, you mean like no Empire Strikes Back?
No Empire. No, nothing.
Empire would be really hard to give up.
But see, Empire required to have a sequel to it.
Yeah. I thought you were talking about the 3 original Star Wars films.
Yes, the original one. When you see A New Hope,
I think it stands alone. Yeah,
I think it does stand alone. But that is harder to imagine because, like, I feel like my whole conscious life included Empire Strikes Back, so it's hard to imagine without that. So that makes sense. But it does. But Star Trek. I mean, Star Wars one. The first one does absolutely 100%. They could have just been done.
At least once a month, my wife says to me, "I love you," and I say, "I know." Back to her. I just, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Empire Strikes Back, people.
My daughter has lots of dishware with those 2 lines on it.
I begged my wife to let it. When we went to Disney Springs years ago, they had hats, ball caps that were. I love the shape of them, and one of them is Leia saying "I love you," and then the accompanying hat is "I know" with or T-shirts. And I was like, "Can we please buy these and wear them together? It would be the best thing ever."
So what I'm just getting the point is that a film can be made with a beginning, a middle, and end, and it's over with.
Yeah,
and that's it. And Star Wars could have been that, but it was so successful, it forced them to say, "Okay, we have to make the next one," and that ended on a cliffhanger, so they had to make the next one.
Sure.
And that one ends as if there was going to be no other films afterwards.
I'd be totally fine. Say, you can make that the complete trilogy. Don't do anything else. So with this, I guess we're all in agreement that this, even though there's questions by the end, this still works as a complete package.
It does,
where it's like, all right, you go home, you feel satisfied.
Yes.
Yep.
And, we don't need to make any more.
The best films, in my opinion, are the ones where you talk about them and talk about them and talk about them. That just keep spurring on things. And I think sometimes we try to over-explain. We explain stuff too much. Now, another question would be, I'm glad they made Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan.
Me too.
But
like they needed
if
to.
you really break it down, motion picture could stand. If that was all, it's one contained story.
That's rough.
It could, yeah. I mean, I don't like it, but as far as that, we, to think about not the additional Star Trek films, but it is one contained story. Same thing for Wrath of Khan. If they never made another Star Trek film, that's one contained story.
Killed Spock, and
but that's the whole
Spock
thing.
Back.
They left it open.
But you're right. You're right.
They left that one open for the possibility of a third film, and so on and so forth.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
And that's why I love Rogue One, because it's a self-contained story. It has a beginning, a middle, end, and that's it. But it only exists.
It ends at the
beginning of A New Hope, which is so good.
Right,
like, that was the coolest thing.
But it's self-contained. You know what happens to the characters. The movie ends, and it goes on to the next thing.
Steve, I keep interrupting you, my friend.
No, it's okay, buddy. No, please.
I would be okay. We're totally off Matrix for a minute here, but it's who we are, folks. I would be okay with the original 3 Star Wars films in Rogue One.
Yeah.
I would be fine with that.
Yes.
Because I felt like Rogue One was so darn good.
Yes.
See, folks, we can talk about Star Wars besides Star Trek. Okay, we're open-minded people here.
We're open-minded. We talk about all the things. Any
I'm not
thoughts?
open-minded about the sequels, about the prequels, though. The 3.
I will defend the prequels every day of the week.
Will, and you have on the show.
But I won't defend the sequels, like the sequel trilogy.
I like those better than the original.
What? Okay, we're gonna have to have some words out off air.
All right,
it's the wrong opinion. Just kidding. But any final thoughts?
We've covered. To me, we covered everything. My notes, all my things on my notes are all right there. We've discussed it all. Thank you so much.
I would just say that if anyone in the audience is listening and has not seen the original Matrix, this is an absolute. This was an iconic film. It kind of still is must watch. This is just to round out the sci-fi education. This is a must watch.
Yes, definitely.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for a good discussion. As always, one where we got a little existential this time. And you know what's awesome is that, it's like one of those things where I'm sure if you've listened to a lot of podcasts, you've heard this discussion before, but we did it and we had fun doing it. And if you have topics that you'd like us to discuss, or you have questions or just general thoughts, you can hit us up on Facebook. You can check out our group there. And you can also email us at thebigsci-fi@gmail.com. Is that the correct email
Big
address?
Sci-Fi Podcast.
Yes.
At gmail.com.
Podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you for the correction. And thank you for listening. And we'll see you next time.